Hello, everyone. I'm Jay Maharaj. I'm a senior product manager in the Microsoft Security Customer Experience Engineering team, focusing on Entra and security products that we deliver from Microsoft. Thanks a lot for joining this first session on Entra Identity Governance. There has been quite a few new additions to Entra Identity Governance, and because of that, we decided to make this a two-part series. So what we'll do today is we'll cover as much as possible in terms of the key features of Entra Identity Governance, and then we'll focus on the rest of the features in the second session, which is happening next week. Please use the Q&A to post your questions, and one of my colleagues who are on the call will actually respond to it. We'll be posting the link to the survey during the session as well. We'd really appreciate if you could take some time out to complete the survey. It not only helps us understand if the session was beneficial for you, it also allows us to craft future sessions in a more targeted manner as well. If you'd like us to actually get in contact with you to talk further about a particular topic or a question, or have a one-to-one session on Entra Identity Governance, please make sure you request accordingly in the survey as well. If you let us know, we'll definitely get in contact with you as soon as possible. If you have not signed up for the second session yet, the second session is happening next week. Please make sure that you use the links that was provided to you through the different channels to sign up for the second session as well. And with that, let's get started with today's session on Entra Identity Governance. So why is identity governance valuable to any organization? With identity governance, businesses can actually achieve business agility. With many organizations moving to a hybrid model, identity and access lifecycles have been brought to the forefront as integral pieces for maintaining productivity and a strong security posture as well. By migrating these lifecycle solutions to the cloud, organizations can actually cut down costs. They can simplify their processes, they can optimize the efficiency of their environment as well, and run solutions at scale at the same time. With identity governance, you can actually address the security challenges that organizations face. With the number of digital identities constantly increasing, along with the applications they use, security breaches become a real risk for organizations. Since IT admins typically don't have full visibility of all these identities, what content and resources they use, or when those permissions expire, the vulnerability within an organization is heightened. And lastly, every organization has got some compliance obligations. The strict compliance requirements in place for regulated industries and for government vendors make it hard for IT admins to know exactly which users have access to what company resources and at what time. With roles and responsibilities constantly changing, the burden becomes even greater. IT admins who deal with onboarding and offboarding also don't have a centralized view of user access or logs, which makes it harder to solve issues as they arise within an environment. Different people within an organization have different needs. Every organization needs to protect who has access to their applications and data. But within an organization, and let's use our fictional company Contoso as an example, different departments have different needs. Let us take Jivan as an example. Jivan is Contoso's business manager. He wants that employees have timely and effective access to the resources required to do their work. Where Megan, Contoso's IT operations manager, is looking to reduce operational costs by automating processes like password management, provisioning, and access requests. For Nestor, Contoso's compliance officer, compliance and audit performance is important. He wants to be able to validate that the right controls are in place to meet mandatory security and privacy requirements and set up repeatable processes and procedures for a more auditable and simpler way to manage access certification. Lastly, Contoso's InfoSec director, Franklin, is looking to reduce the risk and strengthen security. He wants centralized visibility and he wants to be able to establish an authoritative source of who has access to what and to what extent. Every organization needs a complete identity governance solution. To be able to achieve this and be successful at the same time, Organizations need to align the requirements of various stakeholders and work together to achieve a complete identity governance solution. In the case of our fictional organization, Contoso, they have actually formed a virtual team consisting of Lynn, a cloud security architect that reports to Franklin, the director of InfoSec. Lynn is also part of Nestor's compliance V team. Joe, an identity architect that reports to Megan and also works a lot with Jivan, is also part of the same V team as Lynn. They have the assignment to look for a comprehensive identity governance solution and to make sure that the requirements of the 4 key stakeholders are met. We will use this fictional organization, Contoso, and some of the personas that we have just defined to see how Microsoft Entra Identity Governance capability can help meet these requirements. So what is Microsoft Entra Identity Governance? Entra Identity Governance allows you to balance your organization's need for security and employee productivity with the right processes and visibility. It provides you with the capabilities to ensure that the right people have the right access to the right resources at the right time. Identity governance gives organizations the ability to do 3 tasks across employees, business partners, and vendors, and across services and applications both on-premises and in the cloud as well. And these 3 key tasks are the governance of the identity lifecycle, the governance of the access lifecycle, and the security of privileged access for administration. More specifically, Microsoft Entra Identity Governance is intended to help organizations address the 4 key questions that you see on the slide. Which users should have access to which resources? What are those users doing with that access? Are there effective organizational controls for managing access? And can auditors verify that the controls that the organization has in place is actually effectively working for that particular organization? Similar to other organizations, Contoso has invested a lot into the migration to the cloud. One of their requirements when looking at any solution is it a cloud solution? A lot of organizations are now using a cloud-first strategy. This fits nicely with Microsoft's strategy on identity management and governance. Microsoft's identity governance capabilities are an extension of the identity and access management capabilities that you guys are very familiar with, which we previously used to call Azure Active Directory, which has since then been renamed to Entra Identity. Even though it is a cloud-governed management, there is the possibility to reach back on premises when necessary as well. Microsoft's Entra Identity Governance capability focuses on self-service to support business-level decisions. It focuses on policy-driven automation and analytics-driven insights as well. It also focuses on reporting to address any compliance and reporting needs that the organization might have. Just as the rest of Entra Identity, it is built using industry standards, and it provides APIs so that partners or customers can easily integrate with the solution. Let us look at a typical journey of a user at an organization. In our case, Contoso. From the moment the user is hired till the moment the user is leaving the organization to see how Entra Identity Governance can actually help them. When a user, and that can be an employee as well as an external user, joins an organization, there are several phases in the identity lifecycle. Upon joining the organization, the user needs to be onboarded into the organization's directory. It can be, in this case, it has to be the Entra Identity environment. The next step would be to automatically grant the right access for this user so that they can become productive on day 1. We refer to this access as birthright access for a particular user. Organizations want to empower users with the ability to do self-service access requests for any additional access rights as well. How can we empower our customers so that they can empower their users for their users to become self-sufficient? Next, we want to be able to reduce the risk of stale or unneeded access. Organizations want to do periodic access recertification. And if the user happens to be an admin, it wants to be able to use the principle of least privilege access. And of course, if the user leaves the organization, the access rights needs to be removed from the user. Deprovisioning is something that is regularly overlooked. And what we want to be able to do from an organization's perspective, like say, for example, in the case of Contoso, is be able to deprovision users in a timely manner so that it does not actually pose any risk to our organization. Organizations want to be able to automate the life cycle process as much as possible. So no need for somebody to then go and individually assign people access to resources manually. And then finally, organizations want like the whole life cycle to be audited and reported upon as well. So what we want to be able to do from an organization's perspective, like in the case of Contoso, is be able to address all those different phases of the identity lifecycle and the access lifecycle. Now let's take a closer look at the different steps in this journey and start with the onboarding of a user into a directory. The first step in any organization's user journey is to onboard the user into the directory service. Our user can come into the directory in different ways. The first one is a HR connected system. Secondly, a user can be created as a guest user or an external identity within your environment. Users can be synchronized from your on-premises directory services to Entra Identity through Entra ID Connect or Cloud Sync. Or you can create users manually into Entra Identity or bulk load through CSV into Entra Identity as well. Especially the integration with HR systems is interesting for organizations because, first of all, this achieves a high degree of automation. And secondly, it becomes the single source of truth for all accounts within an organization. And because of this, there's a huge emphasis on HR-driven provisioning. HR-driven provisioning is the process of creating digital identities based on a human resources system. With HR-driven provisioning, the HR system becomes the start of authority for any newly created digital identities. You can automate the creation of employees and contractors in both Entra Identity and in on-premises Active Directory as well. You can automate the life cycle between IT and HR user profiles with write back from Entra Identity to the HCM system. Updates to the user in the HR system can automatically flow to the directory services. Examples of such updates could be changes to the role, user promotions, or terminations, etc. From a customer perspective, automation of onboarding and offboarding can significantly reduce human error and licensing efficiency as well. It also increases productivity and enhances security at the same time. At the beginning of August this year, we announced the public preview of API-driven inbound provisioning. Up till then, we had clearly defined methods on how you could integrate systems such as Workday and SuccessFactors with Entra Identity and on-premises Active Directory for user provisioning. But at the beginning of August this year, we announced the public preview of API-driven inbound provisioning. With the API-driven inbound provisioning, the Microsoft Entra provisioning service now supports integration with any system of record. And this system of record could be a HR application, a payroll application, a spreadsheet, or SQL tables in a database hosted either on-premises or in the cloud. And you can utilize this to actually provision users from that system into Entra Identity as well. Our customers and partners can use any automation tool of their choice to retrieve workforce data from the system of record and ingest it into the Microsoft Entra Identity environment. Several inbound user provisioning scenarios are enabled using API-driven inbound provisioning. The diagram demonstrates the most common use case scenarios. The first scenario is enabling IT teams to import HR data extracts using any automation tool. So flat files, CSV files, SQL staging tables are commonly used in an enterprise integration scenario. With API-driven inbound provisioning, IT teams can use any automation tool of their choice. Examples are PowerShell scripts, Azure Logic Apps, to modernize and simplify their integration. The second scenario is enabling ISVs to build direct integration with Microsoft Entra Identity. With API-driven inbound provisioning, HRISVs can ship native synchronization experiences so that changes in the HR system automatically flows into Microsoft Entra ID and connected on-premises Active Directory domains as well. The last scenario that we wanted to cover is to enable system integrators to build more connectors to systems of record. Partners can build custom HR connectors to meet different integration requirements around data flow from systems of record to Microsoft Entra Identity or on-premises Active Directory. With that, let me just quickly pull up our demo regarding how you can actually provision somebody from Workday into Entra Identity, and then we'll look at API-driven inbound provisioning as well. So this is my Workday environment. Like this is my lab environment for Workday. What I've done is I've created a bunch of different users in Workday that I want to synchronize from to the on-premises Active Directory environment and then to Entra Identity as well. And I have got a corresponding on-premises Active Directory environment which has been set up this particular way, and this is where all the Workday users are getting created. Now, if I jump into the Entra portal, under applications, what you can do quite easily is if you have a Workday environment or if you have a SuccessFactors environment and you want to integrate with Entra Identity or your on-premises Active Directory for provisioning, you can quite easily find them as applications. So, like as I mentioned earlier, we actually support provisioning to on-premises Active Directory. We support provisioning to the Entra Identity environment, and we also support write back from Entra Identity to Workday as well. And we do similarly support for SuccessFactors as well. All these three different options. Now, in my case, what I have done is I've actually gone ahead and integrated Workday into my environment. So let me just pull this up. Just give me a sec. Let me just bring this up over here. So enterprise apps, and we'll just look at Workday. So the configuration of Workday is fairly simple and it is well documented as well. You can quite easily go to our pages and you'll find documentation on how to integrate Workday for both provisioning users to on-premises and then provisioning users to Entra Identity directly if you wanted to do so. Like the provisioning setup is straightforward. Like in my case, what I have done is if I go to provisioning over here, I've provided some admin credentials to connect to Workday. I have defined which particular Active Directory environment I want to actually provision users to. And then I have also provided the OU that I want all the newly users created to actually go to as well. I've defined some settings so I can actually provide some information regarding what or who should be notified when there is failures with this particular system. And in mappings, what I have done is I have basically scoped it so that any account by the name of Jai hyphen can actually be provisioned to this on-premises Active Directory environment. Now, what I have done is I have not started automatic provisioning. And I'm relying on on-demand provisioning for demo purposes. So in this case, what I can do is I can actually take the information that I have in Workday, like the employee ID or the work ID information over here, and I can actually provision a user using the Workday integration that I have with my tenant. So I'm going to use user 07. So let me just pick this number from here. And we'll do our on-demand provisioning of this particular user to my on-premises environment, and then it will sync to cloud as well. So let me just kick off the provisioning, and it takes a couple of seconds. So it will do its due diligence, do all the checks, make sure the mappings are correct, and then it will provision the user to the on-premises environment. As you can see, the user has been successfully provisioned now. So if I was to go back to my on-premises Active Directory, I should see user 7, so J-WD07 over here, and then in due time, because I'm using Cloud Sync, the user will then be provisioned to my Entra Identity as well. So if I do a couple of refreshes, and because Cloud Sync does not need to wait for 30 minutes to actually do provision from on-premises to cloud, I should hopefully see user 07 provisioned over here. So it has not come in now, but it will hopefully happen in the next couple of minutes. The next one that I wanted to talk about is API-driven inbound provisioning. So with API-driven inbound provisioning, you can similarly go to enterprise applications and find the API-driven inbound provisioning applications as well. So if I go over here and just go driven, you can see I've got two different options. So the first option is to be able to sync or provision users directly to Microsoft Entra ID, or I can actually provision users to on-premises Active Directory and do the same thing that I did with Workday. The good thing is I'm using both of these in the same tenant. So a lot of customers are asking, like, can I use different provisioning methods in the same tenant? Yes, of course you can do. And this is an example. So if I go over here, and let me just quickly find the API-driven inbound provisioning application. So in this case, like, I'm provisioning directly to Azure Active Directory, which is Entra Identity. And similarly, like, I'm using, like in this case, I'm using a CSV file to actually provision from, and I'm using PowerShell to use to do the provisioning. You can use Logic Apps, you can use Graph APIs as well if you wanted to do this. So let me just quickly bring up the CSV file. And by the way, like, we provide documentation for this as well. We actually provide sample data on how you can actually do this yourself. So this is basically based on a sample that I retrieved from GitHub. And what I've done is I've added a new employee over here. So I've added Victor Shade as the new employee, and I'm going to use PowerShell to actually provision this user into Entra Identity. So this is my PowerShell and like environment. Let me just make sure that I have saved this document properly before I hit this. So this is all good. Saved over here. Let me just make sure that the attribute mapping is defined. Let's do some validations. Yep, validation is good. Yep, and now we will do the provisioning to that particular application. Sorry, to that particular tenant. Now, what happens with this one is, like, it will ask me a couple of times to verify my user account. What you can do is you can use certificates for this. So with certificates with PowerShell, you can actually automate this whole process. So you don't have to go and look at the or run this manually in your environment. What will happen is, like, based on a scheduled task, you can quite easily provision users and make sure that the user provisioning is happening properly as well. You can update the users as well. So say, for example, if I was to update a particular user in this file, that user would be updated in my tenant as well. Just give me a sec. Yep, so that has gone through. And what I can do now is, if I go to my tenant, I should actually find Victor Shade in my tenant. So let me bring this up again. This user has been provisioned, and let's see if I can go and find Victor. Just do a couple of refreshes. It's completed successfully. While we are waiting for Victor's account to actually appear, so it has now just come through. So Victor's account has now been created through the API-driven inbound provisioning as well. What you can also do is you can actually see what is happening. So you can actually go and extract information from the tenant as well. So we provide commands which you can use to go and see what is going on. So you can, like, look at the logs and see what happened in the last cycle. So I am not actually going to do this for this particular cycle, but as you can see, just this morning, I actually created a user in the tenant as well. So with that, I am just summing up the API-driven inbound provisioning and provisioning from systems such as Workday and SuccessFactors. If you have Workday SuccessFactors, we have got defined patterns that you can utilize to go and actually provision users from those HR systems into Entra or on-premises Active Directory and then sync it. If you have a HR system that was not supported previously, please go and have a look at API-driven inbound provisioning. This is basically a magic. Like, it actually does a lot of different, it covers a lot of different scenarios, and it will actually be beneficial for your environment, and you'll actually not have to rely on manual processes anymore. With that, the next bit that I wanted to look at is how can we then automate the next phase? So we have provisioned a user from a HR system, from a flat file into our directory service. How do we then automate the next phase of the identity lifecycle? Onboarding new users to any organization involves many different moving parts. There are multiple workflows and processes that must be performed for a user to gain access to the resources they need to diligently perform the activities of their role. Most of these have been historically manual processes. IT admins have had to rely on scripts to complete the onboarding processes, and due to the disjointed nature of the onboarding processes, troubleshooting problems becomes a complex and a time-consuming process as well. To tackle the challenges that organizations face with lifecycle automation, we released Lifecycle Workflows in general availability at the beginning of July this year. Lifecycle Workflows is a new Entra Identity Governance capability that enables organizations to manage Entra Identity users by automating the three basic lifecycle processes: the joiner process, the mover process, and the leaver process. We refer to them as JML. The joiner process is when an individual comes into the scope of needing access. Say, for example, a new employee starting in your organization. The mover process is when an individual moves between the boundaries within your organization. This movement may require more access or authorization. An example would be a user who was working for the marketing department before now is moving to the sales organization. And finally, the leaver process. With the leaver process, when an individual moves or comes out of the scope of needing access to your organization, how do you currently deal with that particular process? A good example of that would be an employee has been terminated, or an employee is retiring from your organization, or an employee is actually leaving your organization for some other organization or for a greener pasture. Workflows contain specific processes. So within the lifecycle workflows, there's specific processes that are run automatically against users as they move through their lifecycle. With lifecycle workflows, we provide predefined workflow templates for most common user tasks. We provide automatic triggers based on attributes, state changes of a user, and we also provide extensibility and flexibility with logic apps as well. Let's have a look at the joiner scenario. Before lifecycle workflows, a new team member would have to wait for days, or at times even for weeks, before all the necessary access to resources would be provisioned for them to become productive. And I'm sure, most of you on the call would be, quite familiar with this. I myself have gone through organizations where I had to wait for weeks before I would get access to the applications and resources that I would need to be able to do my job properly. Before lifecycle workflows, this whole process would be burdensome for IT admins to provision access manually to various resource types, jumping through apps and through applications and scripts. And even with their best efforts, this would become time-consuming and inconsistent. Inconsistent in a way where two users starting in the same team, performing the same role, hired at different times, would be manually provisioned with inconsistent access. With lifecycle workflows, we provide templates that can be used for various joiner scenarios. And you can rest assured that these tasks will be consistently actioned every time. It is fast, efficient, and it is infallible for IT admins. When a new user is provisioned in Entra Identity, the attribute employee hire date is provisioned with the date of when the employee is supposed to be starting in your organization. This employee hire date can be provisioned from your on-premises Active Directory, from your HR system, or through the API-driven inbound provisioning as well. Based on this particular date, workflows can be triggered to perform tasks automatically. Let us have a closer look at the out-of-the-box workflows that are available for the joiner process. We provide pre-hire workflows. With pre-hire, what we expect is when a user account is provisioned or pre-staged into the Entra Identity environment well before a user is supposed to start in the organization, the account is in a disabled state, right? But what we can do with a disabled account is we can actually create a temporary access passcode, say, for example, and send it to the manager of the new person who's supposed to start in the organization. The manager can then share the temporary access passcode with the with the user who's supposed to be starting in your org. And that temporary access passcode can be used by the user on day one to log into your environment. Like, I'm sure many of you over here would have come across, like, this in your experience, this in your professional career, where you start in an organization and for the first couple of days you are running around trying to find somebody who can give you a password to log into an environment. We are trying to solve those kind of challenges with lifecycle workflows. The second one is the higher, like, so for example, when the person is starting, like on the date of on the start date for that particular person, you can actually run workflows for those as well. And these workflows can actually add people to groups, license them for different things, and you can send a welcome email to that person saying, you know what, Jay, welcome to Contoso, and these are the trainings that you can do while you are getting ready for your role. So all those different kinds of joiner scenarios are covered. Let's now have a look at the leaver scenario. So before lifecycle workflows, when somebody leaves the organization, their access to services and resources would remain intact, posing a major risk to the organization. In many cases, organizations are very good at provisioning users, but then when it comes to deprovisioning those same users, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time for them to do it. In many cases, they forget about it altogether. Before lifecycle workflows, the IT team would always be under the pressure to action this in time. But with access to resources spread everywhere across the organization, it becomes almost impossible to remove all resource access in a timely manner. Especially with terminations, where some disgruntled employee has been terminated and you need to actually get rid of the access as soon as possible. The IT teams are usually very stressed under those kind of scenarios because they have to jump around different tools, different scripts, different applications, and different resources to get rid of all their access. With lifecycle workflows, you can easily set up the process so that certain workflows can trigger on the day and time the employee is leaving your organization to remove the access and disable the account. You can also set up post-offboarding tasks to ensure that the account is gracefully deprovisioned from the directory service. With real-time terminations, you can set up workflows that can be run on demand. And what you can do is you can say, you know what, okay, this particular has been terminated from my organization. I'm just going to run this workflow on demand, and that particular person's access will be removed. The account will be disabled or deprovisioned, totally based on your requirements and your choices. When a user tenders their resignation, the HR becomes well aware of the date and time the user will be leaving the organization. This information can quite easily be populated in an attribute called employee leave date time. This is an attribute that is there in Entra Identity, and you can sync to this attribute from on-premises Active Directory, from API-driven inbound provisioning, and from HR systems such as Workday and SuccessFactors as well. Now, based on this attribute, workflows can be triggered to perform tasks automatically. What are these tasks? Let us have a look at what tasks are available out of the box, or what workflows are available out of the box that you can utilize for the leaver scenario. So we talked about the termination, right? So somebody has been terminated from your environment. What you want to be able to do is make sure that you are able to successfully remove their access in a way which is not burdensome for the IT admin. You can actually utilize that workflow to do so. If, say, for example, somebody is leaving your organization and they have actually given their notice to the organization saying, you know what, in 14 days' time, I'm going to leave the organization. The organization now knows the date and time the person is supposed to be leaving. They can actually populate the employee leave date time attribute with the value of that particular date and time when they will be leaving. Based on those settings, what you can do is you can actually trigger certain tasks. These tasks can then take care of things like disabling the user account, making sure that the user has been removed from all access, or removing licenses of products that you want or that you are in need for, licenses for other people. You can actually do those kind of things quite easily, quite quickly, and then you can also rely on custom extensions with logic apps to make sure that you are able to then integrate, or cover other scenarios or other requirements that you might have in your organization which are not covered by the out-of-the-box tasks which are available with lifecycle workflows. So with that, let me jump back into the portal. And we'll have a look at the lifecycle workflows and what is available in terms of the workflows that are there out of the box. So there are these other 8 workflows which are currently available. There is 3 of them are for the joiner process, there's 1 for the mover process, and then there's 4 for the leaver process. And as I mentioned before, it's fairly straightforward to set up. So if I look at this pre-hire employee workflow, what I can do is I can quickly look at the trigger details. So I can say a set number of days before the employee is supposed to be hired, I want to do certain tasks in my organization. I can also further scope it as well. So I can say, you know what, if the employee is part of department equals marketing, I want these tasks to run for them. If the employee is part of department equals sales, I want some other tasks run for them. So you can actually make that so that people starting on the same date. So going back to the basics, people starting on the same date don't have to have the same tasks run for them. You can actually scope it based on a property of the user as well. And I used department as an example, but you can utilize other properties as well, such as the office location of the user or something else. The main thing that happens as part of this is the tasks. So you can actually run certain tasks as part of this particular workflow. In this case, out of the box, we have included the tasks to generate the temporary access passcode and send that as an email to the manager of the person that is supposed to start in your organization. You can actually customize the email as well. So that's one task. But what if you wanted to add some other tasks? Say, for example, you wanted to license the user to products within your organization. How would you do that? You could actually add other tasks as well. So these are the out-of-the-box tasks available for the joiner process. I can actually add the user to a particular group that will give him licenses to Office 365, for example. And when they start, they're already licensed. They already have a mailbox and everything else that goes with it. I can do other things like over here as well. I can enable the account beforehand if I wanted to. I can add the user to selected teams as well. But the main one is this one, which is the custom task extension, right? I can actually create a logic app through custom task extension, which will then create a ServiceNow ticket for this particular user and request a device for this user from the device management team. Right, so you can do those kind of things as well, and we have got some of these integration patterns well defined and well documented as well. The ServiceNow example that I just mentioned, it is there on our document pages. You can actually see these, and you can quite easily integrate that with ServiceNow to generate the ticket and get the device provision for the user. So that was one example. On the day of the employee starting in your organization, you can run tasks such as enable the user account, send them a welcome email, and add the user to groups. Right. For the leaver process, we have talked about some of these before, but this is the one that I wanted to focus on for today. This is the employee, this particular one is offboarding of an employee, and it is based on the employee leave date time attribute value. Right. Similarly, you can define the scope, and you can then define what tasks happen. So in this case, we will out of the box disable the user account, remove the user from all groups, remove the user from all teams. But then additionally, you can run other tasks as well. You can also use the custom task extension if you wanted to run a particular task that might not be covered as part of our out of the box tasks. And then lastly, we have this post offboarding task workflow as well. With the post offboarding workflow, what you can do is you can say 30 days after the employee leave date and time attribute value. So this comes in handy for a lot of organizations that want to keep the user account for a period of time. They want to keep the user account for 30 days or 60 days or 90 days after the employee has left the organization in a disabled state, right? And then after that period of time, they want to be able to then deprovision or remove that account from the directory service. This particular lifecycle workflow actually helps you achieve that. So in this case, I can say 30 days after the person has left my organization, I want now to delete the user from my tenant altogether. So these are some of the lifecycle workflows out of the box that you can utilize to actually set up that next degree of automation. So we provision the user now can be given access to different things, enable, send a temporary access passcode, and those kind of things. Now, in my case, what I have done is I have actually got some lifecycle workflows already predefined in my environment. So if I go to workflows, I've got this particular workflow, is defined. So pre-hire, new hire, and onboarding, right? So if I was to run this on demand for a particular user. Let me just run this particular one for our user, and the tasks that it will perform are these ones over here. So in my case, it will actually generate a temporary access passcode and send it to the manager of the user, and add the user to a group, which in my case is a group that I use for licensing, so that the user gets licenses to Office 365 before they start in my organization. So let's jump back to overview, and what we'll do is we'll run this for a user I created earlier in my environment. So let's do this for Jane Green. So what this does is it actually does the two tasks that we actually defined as part of the workflow. And you'll see, like in the work history, when it populates, like it's actually doing this for, so it's actually doing this for this particular user, Jane Green. But earlier today, what I did was I actually did it for Claire as well. So so this is currently in progress, but what I'll show you is what has happened with Claire. So with Claire's account, like Claire, now, sorry about that. Like I did it for Sally. So with Sally's account, Sally's temporary access passcode has been sent to my email address because I was the manager for this particular person. So what I can do now is I can actually log in as Sally when the account becomes enabled. But in my case, because I only did the pre-hire onboarding of Sally, I only generated the temporary access passcode. And if I go back to my environment, like Sally's account would be disabled in my Entra identity. So if I go over here, and if I was to pull up Sally, you'll notice that the account is in a disable, because it's the hire date is today, I think it's already enabled. So Sally is now enabled. So what I should be able to do is use the temporary access passcode for Sally to log in into Outlook. So let me just bring up a session. So let's log in as Sally. Sally Green Adler. Give me a sec. Yep, I missed the L. Sorry, I missed the Y in the name. So let's try this again. That's good. And it's asking me for the temporary access passcode, which I've copied. Sorry, no, I will go and copy the temporary access passcode because I copied the email. Let me just go over here and let's log in with this temporary access passcode and sign in. Some reason it doesn't like this one. But you get what I'm trying to say, like the demo gods are not happy with me for this particular one for some reason. But what we are trying to do is make sure that the user is able to actually log in using that account. So like if I was to go further up, let's see if we have got the temporary access passcode for Jane Green. So let's try this one and I'll give it another go. And if it doesn't work, then we'll just move on. Let's do that. It's asking for temporary access passcode. Let's grab that temporary access passcode. And now I'm successfully signed into Outlook as this particular user. So this actually shows you how you can actually automate the whole process for that particular user from your environment. Now, there is other workflows as well that I have configured in my environment. So if I go back to my environment over here, like I can actually do other tasks such as like the hire employee workflow. And in addition to that, I'm also doing the deprovisioning as well. So like I can actually go and offboard a particular person as well. So in this case, let me just try offboarding a user from my tenant, and we'll use Sally as an example. So let's pick Sally over here, and let's run this workflow. And what will happen in this case is, based on the tasks that I have configured for that particular workflow, like in this particular task, like in this particular workflow, I'm actually doing these tasks. So disabling the user, removing the user from all groups, and then removing the user from all teams. This is what will happen for Sally's account in my tenant. So the account will be disabled, and she will be removed from all those different groups and teams that she had access to. So this actually shows you the power of lifecycle workflows from a perspective where you can automate the next stage of the identity lifecycle, especially when you have automatically provisioned a user to the directory service. So we'll move on now. Now that we have provisioned the user to Entra Identity, perform some automation for the new joiner, how do we ensure that the new user is provisioned access to applications as well? This is like the full birthright access management. So with Entra Identity, you not only get the option to set up your applications for single sign-on, you can also do outbound provisioning to applications as well, provided that the applications support provisioning. With Entra Identity provisioning, you can automatically create, update, and deactivate accounts in third-party applications via the scheme endpoints. You can ensure that the identities in your apps are up to date. You can also provision groups if apps support them, and you can customize the attribute mapping between Entra Identity and your applications as well. So just be mindful of this, because a lot of customers that we speak to, they are not aware of the fact that you can provision users into an application. Let me just bring up my portal again, and if I go to enterprise applications, like if you go to our application gallery, we have over 3,000 applications in our gallery. But what is key, or what we are looking for, is this particular symbol next to that application. So say, for example, if the application supports provisioning, you can actually see that next to that application's name, right? So all these applications actually support provisioning to the application itself. And if the application is supporting provisioning, then why are you actually busy creating or provisioning those accounts manually into those applications? You can quite easily set this. Like if I was to pick up Salesforce, like you can quite easily set provisioning to Salesforce using the provisioning option over here as well. So this allows you to make sure that the user is provisioned using the HR system or API inbound provisioning. Lifecycle Workflows adds the user to a particular group that has got access to Salesforce, and then with Salesforce automatic provisioning, what you can do is make sure that the identity is then successfully provisioned to the application as well, taking care of the whole birthright automation for that particular user who's joining your organization. The next bit is not only that we provision to Entra Identity-based applications. Like you can also provision to on-premises applications as well, with the help of Entra ID provisioning agents. So if you have applications on premises that require user provisioning, look at this as a solution and see if it will actually work for you as well. And finally, to wrap up the birthright assignment, a great new addition is the feature that allows organizations to automatically assign and remove resources for birthright access management as well. Similar to how you manage dynamic groups at the moment, you can manage access package assignments based on user properties. These assignments are added or removed depending on whether the user meets the criteria. So you can also extend these to other scenarios with the help of custom extensions via logic apps as well. So in this one, say for example, somebody was part of the sales department and you wanted to be able to assign automatic access to applications for the sales department to that user. You can do this where, with the auto assignment, you can say if the user department equals sales or matches sales, they can have access to this particular access package that is for the sales department. In many cases, the initial birthright access that is automatically provisioned for the user during onboarding based on their role may not be sufficient. For example, the newly onboarded user may need elevated access to an application that they were automatically granted birthright access to. A good example is the user was provisioned with basic level access through their birthright, but now the user needs admin access because they are taking on more responsibilities in their role. How does a user go about requesting that elevated access to those resources in your organization at the moment? Second example is new access to applications. So I was provisioned with access to certain applications, but because now I'm working on a project where I require access to new resources or new applications, how do I go about requesting access? Or how do your users go about requesting access to those new applications or resources within your organization? Like, that's a key challenge that a lot of organizations want to be able to solve in a relatively easy and frictionless way. As an organization's users need additional access rights, Entra Identity Governance provides users with the ability to do self-service access requests, and for IT to request access rights reviews with approvals by managers, other users, or even the users themselves. Entitlement management provides access lifecycle management for your employees, as well as your non-employees, such as your business partners or vendors as well. Organizations can create predefined packages of resources that contain resources such as groups, applications, and SharePoint online sites. Organizations can then define policies on who can request access and for how long to those packages. Organizations can actually include multi-stage approval workflows. So they can say, you know what, for this particular package, I want like this manager to approve it, this resource owner to approve it, and so on and so forth. They can also apply custom workflows for access lifecycle through logic apps integration as well. And they can also apply separation of duties checks. So if they did not want particular groups of users or certain people to be able to request access to a particular package, they can actually apply separation of duties as well. And finally, users can have time-bound access as well, and the access can be regularly reviewed as well. I just wanted to quickly introduce some of the components of entitlement management. The first one that I wanted to talk about is catalogs. Our catalog is essentially a container of related resources and access packages. Catalogs are used for delegation so that non-administrators can create their own access packages and catalog owners can add resources to our catalog that they own. So if you think about catalog, and if you are one of those organizations that wants to be able to delegate the management of packages and resources to somebody else, catalogs is the way to go. So what you can do is you can actually delegate somebody access to a catalog, and then they can take charge of things from there on themselves. The second component is resources. A resource is an asset such as our office group, our security group, or an application, right? A SharePoint online site that our user can actually be granted access permissions to. Then we look at the component of access packages. An access package is a bundle of resources that our team or project needs and is governed with policies. An access package is always contained within a catalog, and you would create a new access package for a scenario in which users need to request access for particular resources. We also have this concept of connected organizations. A connected organization is an external Entra identity directory or domain that you have relationship with. So, for example, you are working with an organization quite regularly. Like you want to be able to create resources or access packages so that only people from that connected organization can request access to. So you can quite easily connect to that organization and make that whole collaboration between your organization and the other organization a bit more frictionless. Lastly, we talk about policies. The last component that I want to talk about is policies within entitlement management. Our policy is basically a set of rules that defines the access lifecycle, how users get access, who can approve access, how long users have access through an assignment. Our policy is linked to an access package. For example, an access package could have more than one policy. One policy for employees and how that request approval process works, and a second one for external users, showing them how or defining the rules regarding how those external users go through the approval process to get access to our particular access package. With entitlement management, you can now create custom extensions for access packages at various stages of the access lifecycle. So organizations can trigger logic apps via custom extensions when access is requested, when the access is approved, when the access is granted or removed. These no-code, low-code workflows can be used for custom approvals, custom notifications, and ticketed provisioning for disconnected applications as well. With entitlement management, you can also allow for guest user management as well. Like actions such as collecting additional information during the request workflow for guest users. You can actually quite easily do that. Ask them in questions, provide them some answer formats, and people will be able to provide those answers for you. You can store collected information in user attributes for future reference by applications or other processes within your organization. So say, for example, you ask a guest user what organization you belong to, or what department in a particular organization you belong to. And then you can store that information in an attribute for that guest user and then run other processes on those attributes afterwards. You can disable a guest user when the last access assignment is removed and then delete the user after a set number of days. So this allows you to take care of the lifecycle management of guest users as well. Any user coming through this particular entitlement management channel, like guest users who request access to access packages, can automatically be created in your directory. So you don't have to go and invite those users as guest users. They will be created as guest users automatically in your directory when the access is approved for them. And then based on their last access assignment, you can define settings so that that user is disabled in your tenant and then deleted from your tenant after a set number of days. And we want to be able to talk about separation of duties as well. So what we want to be able to do is, say, for example, if a particular user belongs to a group, we can define it such that user will not be able to request access to a particular access package. Or if the user belongs or has access to another access package, we can say, if the user has access to access package A, I don't want that user to be able to request access to this particular access package. Before I get into this slide, I'm mindful of time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop over here and I'm going to start from this particular place in the next session next week, where we will cover how you can utilize verifiable credentials from our Entra Verified ID service to request access to access packages. And not only for your organization, but for other organizations as well that work closely with your organization. What you can do is you can utilize this new method of approval with access packages and combine it with entitlement management so that you can quite easily take care of, or quite easily approve or deny access to access packages for people. With that, I'm going to take a quick pause and just to my colleagues on the call, is there any questions that you'd like me to address in the last couple of minutes? Any questions that has been raised multiples of times, something that might actually be beneficial for us to discuss with the wider audience?
Yes, Jack, probably you can brief about the licensing for guest IDs.
Yep. So what we'll do is we'll discuss licensing in detail next week. I don't want to provide ad hoc information about licensing. There has been a lot of conversation regarding licensing for the identity governance queue and also for guest users as well. So what I have done is I have put some slides together in the next session where I will be talking about all of these in great detail, and we'll cover the rest of identity governance in the next session as well. Is there any other questions, Girish, that you'd want me to address?
No, Jay, we are good. Yep.
All good. So thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining this session. If you have not actually registered for the next session, please make sure you go and register for that one. I am posting this survey, and this will be sent to you as well. Please complete this survey, and it will be good to see you guys in the next session as well. Make sure you join on time. We'll cover entitlement management. We'll cover the rest of the bits that we have we'll cover the rest of the bits with identity governance in the next session. Once again, I've just posted the link for the survey. If you don't mind, please take a couple of minutes to provide your feedback. If you want us to get in contact with you, let us know, and we'll do that as well. Thanks once again. Thanks a lot for your time, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye-bye.